All right. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susanna Tuttle, and I am the director of NCIPL, the North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light Creation Care program of the North Carolina Council of Churches. It is with love and in grace that I welcome you to this celebration of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. What a gift it has been to partner with the Earth Day Network and their hosting of a 24-hour live event online this year. I hope you've had a chance to see some of the beautiful videos that started early in the morning, our time, and will go long into the night around the globe. And we're also really grateful that Helen Rose, the director of the Faith Outreach component of Earth Day Network, specifically wanted to design programs that would reach our faith communities to address the causes and consequences of global climate change as a moral imperative during this critical time of awakening, the Great Awakening as we refer to it, and certainly the scenarios that we are all in facing this time of taking place in our homes and in our shelters in order to better strengthen our communities and help heal the world during this time of COVID-19. So as I said, if we were all together in person, we'd be able to introduce ourselves, make new connections, new friends, exchange contact information. But here we are online doing the best we can in this very unique time. We hope that events like this can create community, even if we can't be together physically. We are always together spiritually, now more than ever. So I'm going to go through this slide presentation, as I said, and you can see that we have titled it Solar 101, Programs for Congregations. So this is a big picture overview with some specifics to North Carolina as an example for conversation. Do please use the chat box to communicate any questions as they're coming in. Maybe somebody on the line can answer some of those questions and we'll get the conversation going. Okay. So briefly, for those of you that might not be familiar with Interfaith Power and Light, we are a national campaign active all across the country. And North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light was actually founded as the North Carolina Council of Churches Eco-Justice Climate Connection Program in 2000. So we also are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year alongside the North Carolina Council of Churches 85th anniversary. We were founded in 1935 to address racial inequities in the South. And over the course of the 85 years that we are celebrating big time here in the state, we have really evolved into living into what we call the JEDI principles. And the JEDI stands for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So as we live into these JEDI principles, all the initiatives at the Council of Churches are designed to meet the community where they're at, address what their needs are, identify how we can support them, and do that as a moral imperative, as a moral call to action, putting our faith into action to build the beloved community. You can see here, we have a big reach in North Carolina through the council, representing 18 denominations of over 6,200 congregations and 1.5 million congregants across the state. And our mission is to work with faith communities and people of conscience. We use that language because we're finding that, especially in our younger aged communities, that a more traditional religious setting is something that is expanding and evolving. And we know that we can reach folks who just are in the right, the correct place of having a moral understanding of caring for communities and caring for creation. And we do this to identify and implement positive, hope-filled responses to climate change as a moral imperative, as I have said. Educate, inspire, mobilize. Those are the three words that we put in front of folks. And like the recycling image that we're so familiar with, this is an ever-going process. We need to educate, to inspire, to mobilize, so that we can educate, inspire, and mobilize, and continue to do so all life long. So today, as I mentioned, the opportunity to speak to you specifically about about what's happened in North Carolina over the course of many years. This is a result of many, many years of advocacy, of spending time at, we call our legislative network, our North Carolina General Assembly, and the role that the faith community has played in developing the policies and procedures that have created increased amounts of access to solar for our state and for our community members has been significant. The North Carolina Council of Churches and NCIPL, as the Creation Care program, every year since 2013 has had an annual advocacy day at the General Assembly, where we bring volunteers from across the state as people of faith to speak as themselves, as voters, to their own elected officials about the policies that they care about. And storytelling, as we know, is so important. So really lifting up the stories that we're experiencing in our congregations, in our communities of faith, the conversations of maybe someone coming into a church or a synagogue or a mosque temple and saying, I'd really like to see our community have solar and be as a visible way of protecting God's creation. And we know we need to reduce our energy consumption, get off fossil fuels. This is something I'd like to initiate. And then maybe a small group of folk come together and start thinking about how that might work. And then becomes a barrier after a barrier after a barrier to actually implementing solar on that facility for a variety of reasons. And one of the largest barriers for nonprofits, of course, has been the barrier to having the adequate access to financing the process. So this particular piece of legislation that, as I said, was in years and years and years in the making, that was passed in 2017, signed into law by our governor in September of 2017, designed as a 5-year program between 2018 and 2022. So the 5-year program, we actually lost a year because of the year the legislation was passed. So it's actually a 4-year program. And we are halfway through the program. And so this program was, again, North Carolina is a regulated monopoly utility state. Duke Energy is the investor-owned utility that comprises approximately 53% of customer base for North Carolina. We do have 26 rural electric co-ops in the state that NCIPL is also working very closely with, because there's a whole host of opportunities and resources available to rural electric co-ops. And they are not currently regulated by the Utility Commission of North Carolina. So that's a presentation for another time that I'd really like, if any of you are working in the rural electric co-op space, to reach out and get in touch. I have been very involved in working across the Southeast with all of the organizations that are working in that space. So lots of resources to share. So this bill, as it was designed and put into law, is specifically for Duke Energy. And what it has done, the way the program has designed, been written and designed, is to increase customer access to these initiatives. A solar leasing program, we had not had that before. We still in the state do not have what is called third-party sales, or some of you might know them as PPAs, or power purchasing agreements. We do not have those yet legal here in North Carolina. So this bill 589 allowed us to access programs for leasing, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit here. And then the rooftop solar rebate program was something that was absolutely critical, and I'll prioritize this in our conversation, because of course for nonprofits, we are not eligible for the federal rebates that are available as incentives. So we wanted to make sure that the rooftop solar rebate program for nonprofits through this initiative was a premium product, and I'll get into that. A community solar program is something that has been made available and encouraged. It is part of this package of this legislation, and sadly, nothing has moved on that. And we might have a group conversation about that towards the end of the presentation, about how we could get something like that moving forward. And I'd love to learn more about community solar in your locations across the country. And then the Green Source Rider program for large energy consumers. That's more on the corporate business side, manufacturing side of things. And then a study of emerging technologies like energy storage, which is obviously critical moving forward for our renewable energy initiatives. So this is the solar rebate program broken out into the different sectors you can see here. So we have non-residential, residential, and nonprofit. And I want to zoom in on the nonprofit side of this because you can see we received the highest amount of return in the rebate form of a rebate for nonprofits. And this is up to a $75,000 max of a rebate. So when you look at how many watts your system is going to produce, congregations, if you have a large scale system that you're interested and capable of producing, resourcing and managing, you could get up to a $75,000 return through a rebate through that process. And, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here. There's been a lot of challenges with regards to the rebates. And you can imagine that the non-residential and the residential, so that's the commercial and the residential rebates, are scooped up every year on the first calendar date, January 1st. The queue is opened, and these rebates have been applied for and taken up within, I think, the first year that the program opened. I kid you not, the rebates were gone within 2.5 minutes. So clearly that shows that the amount of demand for the rebates is not being supported by the amount of supply that Duke Energy ended up negotiating as far as how many rebates they would allow. And so there's been a lot of advocacy work, a lot of education, inspiration, mobilization around understanding how we move forward in relationship to acquiring more rebates for hopefully what will be the second reboot of this program. And so what's interesting is that you noticed I mentioned the two sectors that got filled really quickly. The nonprofit sector has actually not, in any year of the program so far, all of our rebates have not been applied for, nor have they been implemented, obviously, if they haven't been applied for. So that's what we've done. We have really been on the ground. I've been doing Solar 101s all over the state since 2018. We've actually moved on to more of an online format like this so we can try to reach more people. If you are interested, if you're based in North Carolina and you'd like to have us bring a Solar 101 presentation to your congregation, I can just run real quick through how we do that. We bring in a representative of Duke Energy because we think it's important for the program entity who's managing the rebates is there to tell their side of the story and talk about how it's going to work. And then we bring in a representative from the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, which is a business membership nonprofit organization that we partner very closely with. And they're our third-party trusted partner so that whatever Duke Energy, the utility, is saying and sharing with our congregational network and our communities, NCSEA, the Sustainable Energy Association, can come in and verify that and say, yes, indeed, your utility is telling you the truth, and here's the realities of the framework of the program. And then we bring in solar installers so that you can hear about the different opportunities that different companies are, how they're participating, what their experience is with congregations. And we just want to make it a big roundtable forum so that you all can ask the questions that you need to ask, and we can begin to move forward in getting some of these contracts secured, applying for the rebates, and moving through the program as quickly as possible, because the biggest issue around the rebates is that if we don't use them, we're going to lose them. And the fact that we worked so hard, I sat at many, many, many tables with Duke Energy. I currently serve on Duke Energy's advisory council to the president on behalf of our congregational facility network. We are such a unique building type, and there's not a lot of folks advocating for our uniqueness and how congregations use and consume energy very differently than the small business category that we're put into as ratepayers. And so when we got that 75 cent per watt premium product, I really I really championed and cheerleaded for congregations and said, I promise we're going to use these rebates. We want them, we need them, and we need this premium product. And so we have about 1.5 years left to use up the rebates that have been designated for us. So this is just real brief. If you go to dukeenergy.com/NC solar rebates, you'll get the walkthrough sort of application period. For those of you that don't live in North Carolina, I am just as interested in sitting down with you, setting up some meetings, talking with your states about what you currently have as programs, what the process is. We really do want to develop best practices and not have to reinvent the wheel on this. And of course, Duke Energy is in lots of states, and as a major utility, the largest utility actually in the world, they are able to develop programs in one state and then not replicate it in another state because the states aren't communicating with each other. So currently I'm working very closely with South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light, and some of you might know Reverend Leo Woodbury and the New Alpha CDC and Kingdom Living Temple based out of Florence, South Carolina, and Loretta Slater. We are working very closely, and we have set up meetings to go to Duke Energy and let them know that we're in communication, and our message is basically, if you're talking to one of us, you're talking to all of us. So because we have relationships, and so that's been really helpful, and we've all benefited. We've built the relationship with the energy provider, and are really hopefully all having the best interest of the congregations in mind moving forward. Okay, so I went over a little bit of this already. This is a little bit more on the implementation side of things, like how does the rebate work directly? So we said 75 cents per watt, up to $75,000 in rebates. So again, that's calculated in relationship to the size of your system. And then the solar installer actually gets the rebate. So you don't have to deal with any of the paperwork, which is really fantastic. So one of the things that I would recommend as soon as possible is, if you're thinking about solar, either with everything that's going on in 2020, I would imagine this might be a complicated time for this to become a priority conversation for you and your faith community. However, what better time to be having this conversation, because we know how closely COVID and climate are connected and interrelated, and what is going to happen moving forward with fuel sourcing and generation of electricity. So if we could get our ducks in a row and be ready to go and apply for these rebates starting January 1 of 2021, that would be fantastic. And there's a lot of legwork, as you know, as faith leaders, to do to get your community all on the same page where you're ready to say, yes, let's hit the button. Let's go for solar. So I really encourage you to use this time. Earth Day, what a better day. That's why you're all on this webinar. And I'm really grateful to you all for that. So as I said, nonprofit rebates have been left unclaimed every year since the rebates have been offered. Fortunately, folks have done the legwork, and so it's just taken some years. So we hope in the last 1.5 years of the program, it'll really expedite. And yeah, we have volunteers and staff all across the state and all across the Southeast. Some of you might be familiar with the newly forming Southeast Climate Action Faith Leaders Network. I am one of the steering members of that. That covers 10 states across the Southeast. And so we are building a volunteer network across the entire Southeast to work with utilities to get these premium rebates for nonprofits. And you can see down here, these are great resources from the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association. They have so much good content. We are still the only state in the Southeast that has a renewable energy portfolio standard. And it's not a very strong one, but again, we're the only state in the South that has one. And so we owe that a big a big part of the advocacy and organization and working directly with the legislature to the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association and all of the companies that make up their membership network. And NCIPL is very proud to be a partner with NCSEA. So the solar leasing program, and again, if you have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the chat. We're getting through this pretty fast, so we'll open it up for dialogue here pretty quick. But the solar leasing program is something that was really a battle, quite honestly. We have an interesting history in North Carolina in that we have some partner organizations that took great steps to do demonstration examples of why congregations, communities of faith, nonprofits, low wealth communities need to have solar leasing. Certainly as congregations, you know, even though we might be from a utilities perspective, put into a category of small to medium-sized business, what we always remind the utilities and the companies that you know are attempting to develop products for congregations is that we have to actually collect the money from our communities, and every dollar spent on our utility bill is a dollar taken away from our ministry. We are not able to do what we're capable of doing at the community level if our utility bills are astronomically high and don't make sense for how, when, why, and where we consume energy in these facilities. And we're very blessed for the congregations that have had the financial resources, whether it's been through forming an LLC, through a couple of members in the congregation, and being able to invest and then eventually donate the system to the congregation, or the congregation itself is able to do a capital campaign and raise the funds to invest in solar for their facility. Or we've had some great examples of congregations that have actually done Kickstarter campaigns. And one congregation in particular, the United Church of Christ in Raleigh, North Carolina, raised more money than they needed for their solar system and were able to actually then support solar for a low wealth community development project in their area because they raised so much money through a Kickstarter program. So there's a lot of creative financing models out there. But one thing that I also have been having conversations with folks about again is having your money, your financial resources, your good stewardship of your finances as a congregation is the best place for it to be really tied up as an asset on your roof. That could be a good place to have it, and then you own it. And we certainly advocate for owning your own renewable energy. That's a part of energy democracy and the ability to do that. But it also it ties your financial assets up into your facility. So solar leasing allows you to have access to the solar that you want to install, but without having to put your own money down on the project. And so just as it says here, you know, the solar company would come to your building, evaluate, and install. And we always recommend that you look between two to three to even more bids on any project, so that you can better understand. Companies are different and their abilities to support your needs are different. And so that's some of what we could be doing right now during this time of lockdown, especially since our facilities, most of the congregational facilities are, if not completely closed, you know, definitely not open to the public. And so it's a great time to have an evaluation of your facility for solar and energy efficiency projects take place during this unique time. Again, you continue to pay your monthly bill, which ultimately, because by the power of God, solar energy costs less than most energy production. And so very quickly, by the time you're paying your monthly bill is going down as you are paying for the solar that is on your system. So it's really exciting process and project to work through, and it's different in every way depending on the building. But what's also interesting is that we had been advocating for what we called third-party sales, or PPAs, in North Carolina for a long time. This was kind of a settlement, I would say. I think we're going to get there, but this solar leasing program, this is important for me to to communicate. This program does not end at the end of the rebate program. That program from 2018 to 2022 is for the rebates. Once solar leasing was made legal in North Carolina, it is now open for business for the long haul. So what is taken now, though, is it requires that solar installers or investor companies in renewable energy have to file as a lessor with the North Carolina Utility Commission. So you can't just come in and anybody, like my brother down the street, could come in and say, yeah, sure, I'll pay for your solar on your roof, and then you can just pay it back. And part of that is because it has to be directly tied up with the billing process with Duke Energy. So since it is a Duke Energy program and that's how the billing works, the solar companies have to be directly connected through the process, and that goes through our North Carolina Utility Commission. And I feature Eagle Solar and Light here, a great company. They were originally based, or they still are, they're headquartered out of Alabama. And when this legislation passed in North Carolina, they thought this was a wonderful opportunity because they had done solar leasing in Alabama, specifically with congregations. They like to work on a smaller scale and with nonprofits rather than doing big solar farms. And so they set up shop here, and actually their first staff person that I met with was also based in Chapel Hill. We sat down for lunch, talked through it. And to this day, they're currently the only company working with small scale leasing installs like those seen with congregational solar projects. So it actually makes it a little bit easier than with a rebate or any other kind of solar system for me and NCIPL to promote, because this is the company that you can go with if you're interested in solar leasing in North Carolina. And they will be the first to tell you that competition is good. They want more lessors to come to North Carolina. We think we would get more projects installed if there was more availability from a solution side of things. So if you know of any companies anywhere in the country that want to come and help us do solar leasing in North Carolina, that would be fantastic, and you're welcome to give them my contact information. So that's congregational solar in North Carolina. And this map, it was made actually last year in 2019 in partnership with North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, the organization that we partner with that has solar companies as part of their member network. And you can see I've pivoted to really focusing on the eastern side of the state now. And we do have some projects that at the end of 2019 and the early part of 2020 have gone live. So we're working on updating this map. We want to make it really interactive so that you could click on any of these locations. And then here's an example of what you could click into. So that you can learn more. Who's the contact person? How do we learn about your stories? We're collecting solar stories. What was the process? What was the barriers? How is the system working? And what I think is so fabulous about building out this map is to show all the different size systems, all the way from a 4.8 kilowatt system, Myers Park Baptist Church, if you're familiar with that church in Charlotte, North Carolina, that was if not the first, one of the first to install solar way back when in the early 2000s. And they did that without really any, I think at the time we still had a state level rebate program, but again, as congregations, that's not what we're eligible for. So they did some creative financing to get that system up. They're looking to build that system out much larger now. And then you look all the way up to examples of 134 kilowatt systems, and how much of the size of the system that the energy generates that covers the utility bill. So again, looking for stories. I know there might be folks on this call right now that have solar, and we will be happy to write your story if you don't already have it written. My colleague Sarah Ogletree, NCIPL's program coordinator, is happy to interview and write stories for congregations that have solar in North Carolina. And then I talked about receiving multiple bids and how important that is to get the best bang for your buck. It's like anything, you're shopping for something and you want to get the best price, but you also want to get the best product. And there is so much solar on the market at this point. You know, everything from the color of it to how it looks to, if you're interested, I know everybody's always asking about solar shingles. And that's something that is a product that's in development that will get better and better and better. So currently, that's not actually what we're recommending unless you need to totally do your roof anyway. And then there's some, you know, constructive ideas how to do that. But increasingly, folks are recognizing that a rooftop is not the only place to put solar. And certainly a state like North Carolina, where so many of our congregations actually own land, are sitting on pieces of land where they could put up a variety of different kinds of solar arrays, and then again, get back into the community solar program. We're running out of time with the climate crisis, as we all know. And so the idea that it seemed probable and possible back in the mid-2000s that we could go rooftop to rooftop to rooftop. And at this point, we still need to be doing that, but we also need to be putting together some collective bargaining power and better understanding what our project needs are and how we could connect with other project needs. So we are now partnering. And this is a pilot project in North Carolina, but Greenhound would like to very quickly become a national platform for all kinds of sectors, particularly on the residential and nonprofit side. But Greenhound, if you go to greenhoundenergy.com, essentially what you can do is upload the size of your facility, you know, how many meters your building has, what the occupancy of your sanctuary is, just some really simple questions that if you go onto the form and there's some questions that you're not sure about, again, we are here to help you answer those or identify resources to help identify that. Looking at 2 years of your utility bill, and that's something that again, we are working really hard to make more transparent. That's one of my biggest conversations with Duke Energy right now, is with regards to you know, opportunities for time of use programs, looking at demand charges, what a congregational facility pays before we even turn the lights on, and why do we have the rates that we do. Many of you, I'm sure, are going through rate cases like we are here in North Carolina. And I've heard time and time again from our energy and conservationist partners, environmental partners, that faith leaders and faith communities offer the very best expert witness, because we can speak not only about our experience residentially, we can speak about you know, what's going on with energy needs and demands and overcharges and billing mistakes with our congregations. So that's a really awesome and exciting opportunity for us to lead on this. And the Greenhound platform, then once you put your project information into, and this is not just for renewable energy, this is for HVAC, this is for heating, you know, heating and air and cooling, if you needed a new boiler, you put your project into the system, and then the system, the platform, works for you, and they help match you out to solution providers that have also are already in the system. The solution providers are basically, they don't get to see your address or anything like that, but they look at the project type, and then they can put in kind of a project scope bid. And then you, as the customer, as the property owner, can take a look at what all of the opportunities are, what the offers are, and then be matched up with solution providers. We feel like this is a step. It's still in its pilot phase, so we've had some good examples, but we need a lot more folks to participate in the platform so we can see how it's working, develop best practices, and find the best solutions for each project need. And again, my goal is to help cluster projects so that we're not all having to, you know, own the chainsaw or the lawnmower, but that we can share and look at how community toolkits can be designed so that everyone's needs can be met, especially helping our low wealth communities. So the collaborative purchasing power would be that you many of our congregational facilities are very close to other congregations. and say, hey, I'm interested in solar. Are you interested in solar? Yeah, well, we're kind of interested in solar. Well, what would it look like if we went on this together? And so by being able to develop a request for proposals as a community is really fantastic. And obviously it's like going to the big box store. It lowers the cost for everyone. And the solar, we've partnered with Yes Solar Energy, Southern Energy Management, other companies. These are two that we developed what we called the Soul Train project. And we toured with them across the state, NCIPL and the solar companies, and went all across the state in different cities and did different presentations promoting the initiative of collaborative purchasing power. And the solar companies love it too, because of course they have to source their materials. And if they can buy in larger bulk purchasing orders, then the cost goes down for everyone. And their goal, obviously, as a renewable energy company, is to help get renewable energy in communities. So it's a really wonderful way for religious communities to lead the way. And this could be done in a lot of different ways, just neighborhoods. Certainly we're advocating strongly for some policies that require any new building, any new community building, subdivision, whatever it is, any new project to be required that it has renewable energy as part of the project. And then carbon offsets are just something that we all need to move forward. And I have a new carbon offset program that we're actually going to be doing a webinar on April 30th. And so if you leave your email or contact information in the chat box, I'll be sure. This is a national webinar. Interfaith Power and Light has been working on a carbon offset program with the University of California at Berkeley for like over 5 years now, and it finally is ready. So we're going to be promoting that and launching that at the end of this month. But in North Carolina, we have North Carolina Green Power, Blessed Tomorrow. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the organization Blessed Tomorrow through Eco America. Their offsets program through Cool Effect is really great. I know people are familiar with Arcadia and lots of different, they're based out of the western part of the country. So if you have any questions about carbon offsets, we will work together to provide information on that as well. And then again, this just went over, and this is a good kind of opening into where we can talk about where each of you are located and what kind of initiatives you'd like to see and advocate for. But it was just so important, in understanding energy democracy and access and what happens in regulated utility spaces. And I'll just say, as someone who's been doing climate justice work for almost 20 years now and have really dug into the utility space, and I'm really excited, as I mentioned, about the rural electric co-op space, because there's just so much more freedom and an inspiration and inspiring member owners who actually own their own co-op to make decisions about energy sourcing and what that can look like. We can move much quicker in those spaces, a lot of times in the unregulated space or deregulated space, and then we can in the regulated space. And so energy policies matter so desperately in order to make sure that the people's voices are heard, but that we're meeting the needs of communities and not just the business community, not just the large scale customer. And it takes a long time. So we have, and we can get into this a little more, we have a lot of advocacy groups in North Carolina that call upon Duke Energy to do X, Y, and Z and change their business practice and dramatically shift how they operate in the state. And that is good. And from a values-based perspective, that is absolutely critical. And it's also really important that we're educating our citizens and our community members about how policies come about, that there is a policy making process. And so NCIPL has developed what we call an Advocating for Compassion Advocacy 101 program. And since our legislative cycle is starting back up next week on April 28th. And in North Carolina, it's actually in our Constitution that our elected officials have to vote in person. They cannot do mail-in voting. So we're having our own conversation about what that's going to look like. The process, we'll be relaunching our Advocating with Compassion webinar, Legislating 101, so that our congregational networks can understand, you know, what is our long session? We have a long session and a short session. So our biennial 2-year legislative cycle is a whole process. And of course, when a bill is introduced in the long session, it has to make it to the crossover deadline. And then it has to pass into the other chamber. And then it has to come back, you know, the next year into the short session. And not everybody knows that. And North Carolina is a very transient state. We have a lot of new people moving here, and different states have different legislative processes. And so it's wonderful to be an advocate, and certainly we need to be marching in the streets and have our signs. I have my signs. I'm a big, you know, person in the streets kind of gal. And I also want all of the asks that I'm making of all levels of government and utility and corporations to be the right asks, to be the ones like who actually is responsible for shutting down the pipeline in the state, who has the power to do that, where is the power, who holds the power, and ultimately we want the power to come back to the people. And the best way we can do that is to educate, inspire, and mobilize. So holding our leaders accountable as a moral imperative. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to visit faithclimatevoter.org. We're part of a national initiative to put climate, and our denominations and organizations are, you know, putting this front and center, but making sure that that we take the pledge to vote with climate in mind as we communicate the values of caring for God's creation and our children's future. So that's faithclimatevoter.org. And we will be doing more events across the state and across the country to make sure that we get out the vote. So lastly, I just wanted to highlight that this year, or actually last year, as part of the Global Climate Strikes, the Youth Climate Movement, we launched what we call the North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light Youth Leaders Initiative, or YLI. And the young man on the left in this picture, Rishi, who's a member of a Hindu temple in Raleigh, has spearheaded this campaign. He's 14 years old. This past summer, we had 3 different interns who are all in middle school. And it has just been incredible. They refer to us as aging allies. And so I've learned a whole new way of organizing, of listening, and of supporting the youth as we move in this movement. And this was the Raleigh Climate Strike. That's the executive director of the North Carolina Council of Churches in the middle, Sarah Ogletree, NCIPL's program coordinator with the Stoll, myself, and then Michelle Peden on the far right, who is the coordinator for the Youth Leaders Initiative. And then we also have, and I encourage you, if you're not working with your IPL at your state level, or if you want to design your own energy working group, we would be happy to, we really know that it doesn't matter if we figure this out in one location or one state. We have to do this as a national network. And so Gary Smith is fantastic. He's a member of the United Church of Christ in Raleigh, the church that was able to raise more money than they needed even for their own solar system. They're doing a ton with composting, on-site composting with Compost Now at their congregation. And we meet once a month, the 3rd Wednesday of every month on the phone. And this is how we coordinate all of the free energy audits or energy savings analysis that we provide for congregations across the state too. So that's another great model that we can talk more about. And that's Sarah's contact information, programs at ncipl.org. And we are back to the beginning. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Oh, Rishi's 15 now. Rishi's on the line. Hey, Rishi. That's so awesome. Well, we'll get to see everybody because I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. And I am going to, we have a nice size group here. It looks like there's 14 of us. So we can actually open the lines and have a conversation. We have about 10 minutes left. And for those of you that might be newer to Zoom, there's a couple of ways to view your screen. And so you see you have a toolbar at the bottom of your screen by your microphone and your video. And then up in the upper right-hand corner, there should be a place that you can either see speaker view, which makes the person speaking the largest picture, or you can click on those boxes and hover over it and it says gallery view. And then you can see everybody, and not everybody has their camera on, but if you'd like to turn your camera on, that would be great because then we can see you. But I'm gonna go ahead and open the floor. Yay, hi everybody. and open it up for questions and conversation. And if it starts getting that we're talking over each other, one of the ways that we've been using the chat box is to try to create a stack. So either to like type in, you know, question and then we can discuss that. Or if you want to talk next, we've been putting a star in and then we know that person wants to talk next and I'll manage that. So, and I'll change my name here so you can see my name too. So welcome. Thoughts, questions? I'm gonna look back. I hadn't had a chance to look where everybody is. So it looks like we have, is anyone on this call not from North Carolina? Yay, hi. And did you put your information in the chat box or do you wanna introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Michelle. I currently work at a college as a chaplain in Indiana. I am quarantining in Georgia, and when this ends, I'm probably moving to work at a church in Kentucky. So I'm from lots of states right now.
Oh, good to meet you, Michelle, and stay safe in Georgia. We're all praying for Georgia right now.
We need it.
Exactly. Well, good. I look forward to connecting you with folks, especially in Kentucky. We have a really strong interfaith power and light there. And so when you get there or whatever, I'll make sure you have my contact information. We can get connected there. So June Blotnick, do we know how many of the 31 houses of worship used the solar rebate money? Our church, the UU Church of Charlotte, did use it last year. So that map that I showed, I thought I had it, and I can send a link to folks so they can take a look at it. 75% of the 31 congregations that were on that map had installed prior to the rebate program. So yeah. I'm looking at, as far as the numbers, and I'm keeping, I attempt to have the utility, they're hard to get data from, let me know every time a congregational facility gets into the queue for the rebate program. As I mentioned, that's been challenging, and part of it is that the utility does not always know that it's a congregation. It's like more of a number in their billing system. So NCSCA has a data program where they're looking at coordinates. So when they get the information, they actually do a GIS mapping of the facility, and so that's where I'm getting the best data right now. And it's looking like we're at, for as far as fully installed, we're at between 8 and 10 right now, which is, again, not a ton, especially with the amount of rebates that are available to us. And yeah, that's that number. And I definitely need to get your story. I know that there's been a lot of wonderful communications. June, for those of you that don't know, is the executive director of Clean Air Carolina. Do you want to just say hi, June, and just say anything?
Hey, everyone. Yeah, and Susanna, I joined because I wanted to hear this and because we did use the rebate, but in Charlotte, we are planning, we just found out, some type of a Green Faith Summit, probably first quarter next year, for this very purpose, to bring congregations, houses of worship together to use that money that's just sitting there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's the main purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, and if we can do some teasers or like some, you know, online stuff before that to get people ready so they are ready to use it, because as we know, it takes us, like, we move at like God's pace. You know, at the growing of the story of the ecology of the earth, sometimes at the way the congregations make the decisions, it just takes so long. So that's why I think 2020 should be really the year of preparation.
Yeah.
And then we're just full speed ahead. Oh, great. It looks like Laura.
So I'll be talking with you about that.
Cool. That's awesome. And I just want to answer Mary Jane's question really quick, as far as the installation costs, and maybe Laura can speak to that as well. But the rebate is, my understanding is that the rebate is plugged into the actual purchasing of the solar itself. And so Laura Combs from Eagle Solar is online. So I'm so glad I got to lift your company up on this call.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Laura, and it's nice to see you, Susanna, and I hope to meet you in person soon.
Yes.
And I'm going to wear a couple hats today because it's so exciting to hear all that your organization has going on. So I just texted Scott, who is our director for North Carolina, and he's on a different call right now. And he texted me back and he said about, it varies, depends on the circumstances, but about 30% of the rebate goes toward the install. And these next texted notes, I don't understand. So I am, just so you all know, Eagle Solar and Light is a wonderful company. They hired me and they were gracious enough to hire me and then let me go to France for 7 weeks. So I am recently back from France and really getting up and running the last 2.5 weeks. So I'm sorry if I'm not as fluent as I will be in the next month. So yes, about 30% is what Scott is estimating. And I wanted to just chime in for a couple of reasons, and I guess I'll just continue with my next work comment first. As far as the rebating goes, when Eagle is partnering with the faith community, we do not receive the rebate directly. It goes to the congregation. There is some upfront cost that does occur, but the rebate covers that such that you know, that money does come back to the organization. And as far as getting solar moving, it is not a detriment to the bottom line because the rebate comes in the back end of it to help make up for some of the upfront costs that do occur, and that does go to the congregation. So I just want, Scott just texted me, he said 35%. So again, he's on another call, so he's thinking more, and he thinks about 35% of install is covered by the rebate. Second, I'm really excited to hear background for me. I'm an environmental planner, master's in environmental planning. I've worked with nonprofits. I am a homeschool parent, and my son and I have been working at the General Assembly since he's been 13. He's now 17 to promote green energy. And so we have been involved with Representative Soka, for example, and are fairly well known. And it's very interesting when you've got a kid at the General Assembly because they will be more open to them than others. And so down the road, I'd love to share with you some of the things we may have picked up because they're trying to make a 15-year-old not as cranky about how his future is being treated. So I'll be glad to share that with you somewhere down the road. Legislature putting forward good green energy policy is what I've done since 1990. And I am so jazzed by what you guys are doing. And lastly, Rishi, you rock. That's totally awesome if you're still there. And yeah, that's kind of where it is. I'm trying to reach out to as many faith communities as I can to get them on board because this rebate is here waiting to be used. And with this General Assembly, they need to know and they need to see demonstrated use of their initiatives. And getting that passed, Susanna, you rock. That was huge. So, you know, hopefully folks will take advantage of it. And I'm wearing 2 hats as I say that, Eagle Solar and my citizen activist hat.
Thank you so much. That's you know, it was a huge network. June knows very well how hard so many organizations have come together, and we're just so grateful. You know, I remind folk, and thank you for being at the General Assembly, and this year is going to be an interesting year to do advocacy. We know that most of the policies are going to be focused around COVID, but we have to gear up for next year's long session, and this is a huge time, especially as an election year. So Rishi, did you want to just say hi or give a shout out? And
Sure, I guess. I don't really know what to say, I'm kind of on the spot here.
that's okay. Just that anything about
Oh, yeah.
ILI?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so even in the coronavirus, I know everyone's here on the online call. It's nice to see everyone's even still doing the Earth Day here. Because it's my mom's birthday, so birthday and Earth Day.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're grateful to you, Rishi. Rishi was able to get a grant through Youth Empowered Solutions to help get this off the ground, and we really want to grow out this work. And I think having the youth activists and lead the conversation, especially with all the technology that we have available to us. Currently, the North Carolina Council of Churches still has on the calendar for June 2nd our annual legislative prayer breakfast, where the governing board members and all the 18 denominations come and do a big event at the General Assembly. How we turn that virtually, as we know we will need to, will be really exciting. And again, we're up on the hour here, so I know folks are probably have another Earth Day event to jump to, but I'm just so grateful. I will keep this open if anybody wants to go back and get anybody's contact information. But I think we are, you know, coming together, really excited about June's initiative. Bill will be talking soon. It's great to meet new people, and just let us know. And again, go to faithclimatevoter.org, take the pledge. Then we'll be able to be in communication with you that way, and programs at ncipl.org. We're here to serve. This is what we do full time. We're so blessed. All of our programs are at no cost to congregations and people of conscience. So blessings upon you all. Be safe, be healthy, be strong, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Susanna, you're going to stay on a little bit?
I'm going to get off here just because this is part of the Earth Day Network
Oh, okay.
event, but we can connect. Would you like for me to call you, or I'd be happy to.
Yeah, if you will. Follow up on what I raised, but tell you a little bit about where we are right now.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.